So what this means is it makes it increasingly laughable when you see people like Clinton, in this case Hillary, criticize progressive types for being outside the system. Actual quote. But even more, I think the even more harmful myth is, she says, "Oh, the reason why it's so terrible is," and she has to keep going right wing, is because it was crushing to see Democrats lose every presidential. You see, this doesn't apply to Congress and House, was actually solidly in their control. It was, but to them, it's an endless string of losing presidential elections for 2 decades, from 1968 to 1988. So I went, that sounds like bullshit. So I thought I would break it down. So we got the 1968 election, right? You got, okay, the previous favorite, shot in the head, JFK, boom. His VP, Johnson, refuses to run. He can run, he doesn't. So what you have then is a party that's unnecessarily split. Then at the same time, you get these Republicans that actually get this really high percentage of the vote. All right? And then so you got your George Wallace, right? And so you got a a left that's kind of shut down by from killing, really, just straight up killing. And so they're getting political suppression from both their left, with people like Daley suppressing the DNC in 1968. You get the Clintons sabotaging from within, and then you get the suppression from their right, like Clinton, like Nixon, locking people up, for smoking pot. This crackdown, the start of the war on drugs, which really kicks into gear in the 80s. And so it just, these last minute shakeups, and well, it's essentially violence, right? That's what's defining this election. And you can say what they want, but the fact is, the new left leaders are, yeah, they're fucking dead. So if this was a foreign country, would we consider these elections legitimate? I kind of doubt it. I really doubt it. If this happened to a South American country, can you imagine? Could you imagine the U.S. reaction if the events leading up to 1968 happened in a South American country? They'd be like, something is fucked. So all right, they get okay. All right, fine. Nixon wins in 1968. He's still probably more left wing than they are, but okay, fine, fine. Now you get the 1972 election. So the Democrats, they're undermined from within again by neocon granddaddy Henry Scoop Jackson. Because these are the Cold War liberals. They don't follow the New Left program. They're not. Those hippies don't have money. Young people don't vote. So, and then ironically, Nixon technically cheated via with Watergate. So if they're gonna, so when it's in her favor, she considers this election legitimate. When they call Russiagate the new Watergate, they try to delegitimize him, like, oh no, that election didn't count. But Nixon does it. It kind of counts sometimes. So you have that. Now you have the Clintons working on the McGovern campaign. And remember, this is the election whose losses they internalized. McGovern is undermined by his own VP. And, the famous story is that, it's a leak to the media that he's, using electroshock therapy and things like that. Uh, in a friendly media, this wouldn't happen. But even more so, I say Humphrey undermined him. He got 2 stabs in the back from the same guy. So first of all, his VP turned out to be using electroshock therapy. And then secondly, there was this string of insults about how, oh, my government's for a bunch of fucking pot smoking hippies that, want to destroy America or whatever. I'm not taking the exact quote, but that was the gist of it. It turns out that also came from his VP. So his VP destroyed his campaign twice. Now, on top of that, let's remember that Nixon was technically the peace candidate. He's the guy who opened a town with China. He put in the environmental regulations. And another aspect, leading back to 1968, he didn't. Ted Kennedy, who was also a prior favorite, didn't run because his other fucking brother was assassinated. And then not only that, but the George Wallace, the kind of independent, he was running as a Democrat, but he also got shot. So we got this string of people from 1968 to 1972 being shot. So what the fuck? And 1966, 76, it gets even more ridiculous because Carter wins that one. So why is she fucking saying that one? Honestly, it's like, okay, the string is broken. You got a an 8-year string combined with the second 8-year string. So okay, 16 years. 16. All right, not consecutive, but 16. You got Carter for 4 years. All right, but if it's not consecutive, it doesn't matter. It's not. She can't be like, oh, 8 years. It's like, no, fuck you. All right. So here's the one I will give her, which is the Reagan Revolution. But still, I can't completely give it to her because Carter is, first of all, his foreign policy didn't really live up to his ideals. It was still all these kind of right wing people running the CIA. It was still Bush and the story of the October surprise. But the other thing is the media turns the Iran hostage crisis into this total circus. It's something that people just get hammered into their brains, including Clinton. America held hostage. This is something I'll get into later because Iran is an interest of mine, as you might be able to tell. But you get that, and you get the gas prices rising after the Yom Kippur War. Um, we all know whose fault that is. I wrote, it's the Israelis. They had a reason to undermine him. But okay, fine. I'll give her the Reagan Revolution. I think it was overblown. I think it ended as quickly as it began. Which brings us to 1984. 1984. So we got Mondale, right? He's a lib who doesn't take sides between Scoop, neocon granddaddy, Henry Scoop Jackson, or the more leftist types who oppose the Vietnam War. No, he doesn't take sides. He doesn't take sides. He doesn't take sides. Does he? No, no, he does. He selects a vice president who's definitely more towards the Scoop side. But that's neither here nor there. Instead, what we got is the victory, the great 1984 victory, which is given to you by the Reagan Democrats, these whites in the suburbs who joined the Republican Party in the 80s because everything is so great. So, were there any prominent people in the government who became Reagan Democrats? Why, yes, it was Scoop Jackson himself. This guy this barnacle who's stayed around since ever, really. That same left wing, that same guy since 1972 trying to be president. Now, where did this come from? Well, this came from a poll that a pollster named Stan Greenberg took in Macomb County, Michigan. Now, ironically, he would go back to that same county and he would then take the Reagan Democrats and then call them Trump Democrats. Now, the thing about Stan Greenberg is he's associated with another figure in the right wing of the Democratic Party, Rahm Emanuel. That's not just getting into his family name. But another funny thing about the Macomb County, Michigan, is that it actually isn't as poor as they would have led you to believe. It's actually richer than Sacramento County in California, Kalamazoo County. It's not anywhere near the poorest county in the U.S. It's nothing. It's like solidly middle class, but you can still find plenty of rich people there. So then we take that, and then we go to 1988 with Bush Sr. as Reagan's successor. Now, the Democrats basically gave up on the South by this point, and they claimed to be working on the working class. Now, here's the other funny thing. Bush Sr. promises to be less right-wing than Reagan. And now Clinton, over here, they already have the DLC. The DLC, the Democratic Leadership Council, which is modeled off the neoconservative model and stopped just short of an endorsement from Henry Scoop Jackson because they were too right-wing. So just think about that for a moment.